Everyone in the courtroom whispered the same thing. Why would a billionaire be standing alone, without a lawyer? But no one expected that the only person who would step forward to defend her would be the janitor mopping the corridor. And even fewer expected that he would be the only one brave enough to say, "I will defend her." The story. A soft murmur drifted across the high-ceilinged courtroom as Aurelia Leston, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the city, stood silently at the defendant's table. Known for her angel investing projects, scholarships, and community programs, she had built an entire empire based not on force, but on kindness. Yet today, she stood accused of the one thing that cut her the deepest: stealing from her own workers. It was a lie, a trap, a setup designed by the very people who wanted to destroy her. Her lawyer, one of the country's most expensive attorneys, had promised, "Don't worry, Ms. Leston, we will win easily." But when the opposing counsel revealed new, falsified documents minutes before the hearing, he panicked. Then he did the unthinkable. He whispered, "This case is too risky. I can't represent you anymore," gathered his briefcase, and walked out, right in front of everyone. Gasps filled the room. Aurelia's throat tightened, but not a single tear fell. She refused to appear weak, not in front of those who wanted to see her broken. Judge Grathley frowned. "Ms. Leston, are you aware that you cannot proceed without representation? Your lawyer has abandoned you." Her voice trembled despite her strength. I understand, Your Honor." The judge sighed. "You have 10 minutes to find counsel. If none appears, I will have to rule based on the evidence provided." Her heart dropped. She had 10 minutes. 10 minutes to find someone in a courthouse where every lawyer already refused to take her case. Either because they feared the opposing side, or because they expected her empire to collapse and didn't want to be associated. For a moment, she wondered, is this how everything ends? The man in the corridor. Aurelia stepped out of the courtroom, holding her breath to stay composed. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She turned. It was the janitor. A man in his late 40s wearing a simple blue uniform, holding a mop in one hand and a half-filled bucket in the other. His name tag read, Elias Crow. Aurelia managed a polite smile. "I'm fine, thank you." But she wasn't, and it was obvious. Elias watched her with worry, then gently set his mop aside and pulled a disposable cup from his cart. With a small thermos, he poured warm tea. "I don't mean to intrude, but you look like someone who hasn't been cared for in a long time." She hesitated, then accepted the tea. The warmth stung her hands, reminding her she was still human, still vulnerable. Elias continued softly, "You've been abandoned, haven't you?" She nodded. He lowered his voice as people passed by. "Every day, I clean these halls. I hear everything. I know this case isn't what they claim. You've saved families in this city, including mine." Aurelia blinked. "Your family?" He nodded. "My daughter, Mira, got a scholarship from your foundation. Without it, she wouldn't be studying engineering today." His eyes softened. "But the world has a strange way of treating kind people." Aurelia's chest tightened. No one had defended her in days. No one had stood by her. But this janitor, this humble, gentle man, spoke to her with more sincerity than her entire board of directors. The courtroom clerk opened the door. "Ms. Leston, 5 minutes remain." Panic washed through her again. Elias placed a hand over his heart. "Ma'am, you won't go through this alone." She offered a tearful smile. "Thank you, but I don't have a lawyer." Elias took a slow breath, and then words she never expected. "Then I'll defend you." Aurelia stared, stunned. You're a janitor." "I'm also a former law student," he said quietly. "I had to drop out when my wife got sick. But the knowledge, the principles, the fire to stand for what's right, they never left." Her lips parted. He looked her straight in the eyes. "I know the system. I know these people. And I know injustice when I see it." He clasped his hands firmly. "If everyone is too scared to stand beside you, then let me." Aurelia's voice broke. "Elias, this could ruin your job." Elias smiled gently. My daughter once said, Dad, heroes don't need capes. They only need courage. Let me prove her right. The courtroom gasps. When Aurelia returned to the courtroom, walking beside the janitor, the whispers exploded. Is she serious? A janitor? This is ridiculous. Judge Grafley's eyebrows shot up. Ms. Leston, this man is your counsel? Elias stepped forward with surprising composure. Your Honor, my name is Elias Crow. I request temporary approval to speak on her behalf. I'm familiar with courtroom procedures and I will respect all decorum. The opposing lawyer laughed mockingly. A janitor? This is a courtroom, not a charity stage. Elias turned to him calmly. I clean the floors you walk on. The difference is, at least I don't look down on people. A hush fell. Even the judge cracked a faint, impressed smile. Very well, Judge Grafley said. Mr. Crow, proceed. The first defense. The opposing counsel presented doctored spreadsheets, false witness statements, and manipulated numbers claiming Aurelia underpaid hundreds of workers. Elias listened carefully. Then he approached the bench. Your Honor, I request permission to present alternative evidence. The opposing lawyer scoffed. You? What evidence could you possibly have? Elias held up his phone. I have 12 statements from workers in this very building, people she's paid for years, and I have security footage of the opposing counsel's assistants entering a restricted database at midnight last week. Gasps again. Judge Grafley leaned forward. Is this true? The opposing lawyer turned pale. Elias continued, his voice steady. Ms. Leston has dedicated her life to uplifting others. I know because my own family is living proof. The only ones who fear her success are those who built their empires by stepping on others. Aurelia stared at Elias, her eyes filling. Not only had he gathered evidence, he had prepared. He cared. He wasn't just defending her legally. He was defending her heart. The turning point. As Elias presented each piece of evidence, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Workers whom Aurelia had helped submitted written testimonies. Families she supported sent letters. Scholarship recipients stood in the hallway waiting in case they needed to speak. And all of this was organized by a janitor who had quietly admired her kindness for years. Judge Grafley exhaled deeply. This court acknowledges the overwhelming evidence in Ms. Leston's favor. The accusations are fabricated. Case dismissed. Aurelia's knees nearly buckled. Elias gently steadied her. The judge added, and Mr. Crow, this courtroom hasn't seen courage like yours in a long time. The entire room watched the janitor who had just defeated one of the most powerful legal teams. Elias bowed his head humbly. It wasn't courage, Your Honor. It was gratitude. After the verdict, outside the courthouse, Aurelia turned to him. Elias, you didn't just save my career. You saved my dignity. He smiled shyly. I only did what any decent person would. Aurelia shook her head. No, you did what the next morning, the sun rose across the city like a promise, soft gold sweeping across skyscrapers, lighting the rooftops, brightening the windows of schools, offices, and homes. And in a modest, two-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, Elias Crow woke earlier than usual. Not to mop corridors, not to polish doorknobs, not to scrub footprints off marble floors, but to prepare for his first day as Director of Ethics and Employee Advocacy at the Aurelia Foundation. His daughter, Mira, practically bounced with excitement as she handed him his neatly ironed shirt. Dad, you're going to do amazing. You were meant for this. Elias chuckled nervously. I hope so, sweetheart. I've never had a job in an office before. Mira shook her head, placing a hand on his shoulder. Dad, you defended a billionaire in court. I think you can handle an office. He laughed. An unsteady, emotional laugh. Because even though the world now viewed him as the brave janitor who defended a billionaire, he still felt like the same man who pushed a mop down endless hallways. A man unnoticed, a man unseen, until Aurelia saw him. Aurelia's return to the office. Meanwhile, across town, Aurelia Leston stepped into her company headquarters for the first time since the trial ended. Her employees burst into applause. Some cried. Some smiled through trembling lips. Some simply whispered, "Thank goodness you're back." Aurelia lifted her hand gently. "Thank you, everyone. But I didn't win alone." She stepped aside, and Elias entered. Silence. Then the entire lobby erupted into cheers. "That's the guy. The janitor lawyer. He saved her. Welcome, Mr. Crow." Elias's face turned red as he waved shyly. He had never been in front of so many people. Never been applauded. Never been celebrated. Aurelia leaned closer and whispered, "Breathe, Elias. You earned this." He nodded, because deep down he knew this moment wasn't about pride. It was about responsibility. Responsibility to protect the truth. Responsibility to ensure no one felt invisible. Responsibility to help every employee feel valued. The first crisis. Elias expected his first day to be simple. A desk, some paperwork, maybe a tour. He did not expect a line of workers waiting outside his new office door. 20 people. Waiting, hoping, needing someone to listen. The first was an elderly security guard named Ryder. "Sir, no one has listened to us for months," Ryder said softly. "But we heard what you did for Ms. Leston. We trust you." Elias swallowed hard. Trust. The one thing he vowed never to break. "What's wrong?" Elias asked. Ryder explained that some of the foundation's new contractors had been cutting corners, paying some workers late, underfunding community programs, and ignoring safety protocols. Employees who complained were brushed off. Elias wrote everything down carefully. Then came a young receptionist, her hands trembling. "Sir, I'm scared to speak up, but we're being overworked. We're afraid of losing our jobs if we say anything." Then a cook from the cafeteria. Then a driver. Then 2 interns. Each story was different, but the pain behind them was the same. Aurelia's foundation, built on kindness, was being slowly poisoned by people who saw her generosity as weakness. Elias clenched his fists. Not on his watch. Not again. The shadow in the company. Later that afternoon, Aurelia invited Elias to her office. "How was your first day?" she asked warmly. Elias sighed. "Eye-opening." He handed her the notes. Aurelia's expression darkened as she read them. "I trusted those contractors," she whispered. "They promised transparency. They promised fairness." Elias nodded. "They promised a lot. They delivered very little." Aurelia took a deep breath. "Elias, I need you to lead the investigation. You're the only one the workers trust. And after what we went through, you're the only one I trust right now." Elias hesitated. "I'm not a trained investigator, Ms. Leston." "You're honest," Aurelia replied. "That's training enough." The investigation. Over the next weeks, Elias did something that most executives never did. He spent every day on the ground floor. He ate lunch with the cafeteria staff. He rode in the vans with the drivers. He visited the storage rooms with the cleaners. He sat beside the interns who had been ignored by their managers. And slowly, patterns began to form. Workers weren't being mistreated by the company. They were being mistreated by a specific group of mid-level managers, all hired by Aurelia's former CFO, Brenton Vale. A man Elias had seen once before, in the courtroom. He had been sitting behind the opposing counsel. He had smirked when Aurelia entered, alone. He had whispered to the lawyers. He had watched the trial like someone watching a plan unfold. Elias's jaw tightened. This wasn't negligence. It was sabotage. The truth about Brenton Vale. Elias approached Aurelia immediately. "Ma'am, I don't think your enemies are outside the company," he said quietly. "I think one of them is inside." Aurelia's eyes widened. "Who?" "Your former CFO, Brenton Vale." Aurelia froze. "He resigned 2 months before the accusations began," she whispered. "I thought he wanted to start his own venture, so I let him go peacefully." Elias shook his head. "He didn't want to leave peacefully. He wanted you to fall." Aurelia's hands trembled. not out of fear, but out of betrayal. Brenton had been with her since the early days. She had trusted him with financial decisions. She had trusted him with her vision. She had trusted him with her dream of uplifting people. And he tried to destroy her. Elias said softly, "He hired managers who cut corners. He manipulated data. And he worked with those lawyers to make you look like a villain." Aurelia closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. Mistakes hurt, but betrayal carved deepest. Confrontation. Aurelia decided not to hide behind lawyers or emails. She decided to confront Brenton face to face. She walked into his new office, a luxurious tower he had built using the profits from stolen partnerships. Brenton looked up with a slow, confident smile. "Aurelia, didn't expect to see you here. I heard your case got dismissed." "Lucky." Aurelia didn't flinch, but Elias stepped forward beside her, his presence calm and unwavering. Brenton's smirk faded. "You brought the janitor?" Elias replied evenly, "The janitor who uncovered your entire scheme." Brenton stiffened. Aurelia placed files on his desk. Evidence, statements, financial trails, date-stamped logs, screenshots, audio clips, everything. Brenton's face went pale. Aurelia spoke softly but firmly. "You tried to ruin my name. You tried to destroy my foundation. You tried to attack everything I built." Brenton clenched his jaw. "You were too perfect, Aurelia. Too admired. Too loved. The world needed to see your weakness." Elias stepped forward. "Her only weakness was trusting the wrong person." Brenton laughed bitterly. "What are you going to do? Fire me from a job I already left?" Aurelia leaned closer. "No. I'm going to show the world exactly who you are." Brenton's eyes widened. "This," Aurelia said, tapping the evidence, "goes to the authorities today." Brenton lunged forward, but Elias stepped between them instantly, calm, unmoving, protective without aggression. "Don't," Elias said quietly. "It's over." Sparkle's call to action, CTA. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support more uplifting stories like this.